Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the IceHogs back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right with Carlson, Quenneville scores! Here's a chance for Barrett. Fighting scores! Off the face-off! Up in Zeminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it, shoots one, bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski, another jam on the shot, turning and firing. They go! They score! They score! Now they catch each other and they both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Hello and greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado.
And Kansas City, Missouri.
And there is Arrowhead Stadium in the background there. Sean's Buffalo Bills are going to be playing Kansas City today. We're recording on Sunday, but this is the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 2 for Monday, January 25th, 2021. This is take number 2 because Sean's table collapsed on him. And as a Bills fan, I don't know if that's a good omen or a bad omen to have a table break on you before the game.
I would think of it as a good omen.
Yeah, that's right. Because tailgating and everything, you break the tables before the game. Okay. Yeah, I'm picking up what you're laying down. Well, hey, if you were tuning in for a podcast on cattle grazing info, I regret to inform you that we're not going to be able to help out much because this is an American Hockey League podcast. And my name is CC Hockley.
And I'm Sean O'Brien.
And thank you guys for tuning in with us.
If you're new to hearing CC and I talk about hockey, we're going to break down some AHL hockey for you. We both watch a lot of games and are going to talk about what we see when we watch the games, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you might want to head over to our podcast feed or channel, wherever you're listening to us from, be that YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or Google, and check out episode 0. It's a quick 20-minute primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about. So if you're new to more of the advanced hockey stats terms, you'll better be able to pick up what we're putting down after you listen to episode 0. I promise it isn't that nerdy or technical. It's short and sweet. That being said, let's get to business.
Let's get to business. But first, I want to shout out to the Connecticut Whale and the NWHL for playing in the bubble. So go Whale. Anyway, let's get started with the Central Division. Our first episode covered the Henderson Silver Knights and the Ontario Reign of the Pacific Division. And now we're going to be heading east a little bit. We're going to be covering Rockford, Grand Rapids, and the Chicago Wolves of the Central Division. And if you go from west to east, from Rockford to Grand Rapids, that's a good 5.5-hour car ride. There are some tolls, as what happens out in the east there. 338 miles. So not a huge jaunt, but we're going to do the Midwest trifecta right now. We're going to start with the Rockford IceHogs. Now, their head coach is Derek King. He is going to be starting his second full season. There's an asterisk there because he did have a bit of a partial season in 18-19. So we'll call it 2.5 seasons for Derek King, the head coach of the IceHogs there. 2019-20, their overall regular season record was 29, 30, 2-2. That was good for 5th in the Central Division. Just one spot out of a postseason appearance would the AHL have had a postseason before they abruptly stopped the league back in March of 2020. The Rockford's affiliation for 2021, Chicago Blackhawks in the NHL, Indy Fuel of the ECHL, one of the 13 teams playing this year. Games scheduled 30, anywhere between 24 and 44 is what the AHL has on deck this year. 4 opponents: Cleveland, Chicago, Grand Rapids, and Iowa, all interdivision. Nothing super important of note there. But let's get talking about the forwards. We're going to talk John Quenneville. Let's mention him first. He's a good AHL first liner. And then Gabriel Gagne. He's produced a bit in limited time last season. Mackenzie Intwistle, Boris the Spider himself, is fine in a middle six role. He doesn't have flashy puck skills, but he's a big guy who battles in front well. And that could pair well on a line with someone like Evan Barrett. Barrett is wrapping up a very solid collegiate career at Sean O'Brien. Notice Penn State. There's your alum. Yeah, Sean O'Brien, Penn State alum. And he's got good puck skills. We'll get back to that. Good puck skills and vision to find seams, but he lacks the physicality and skating speed that I think he'd be a good pair with Entwistle's physicality. I like Michael Tepley's chances. He's got an NHL shot and he's flashing some excellent puck skills, but unfortunately that inconsistency in his skating hold him back. Outside of that, it's not looking very good for the IceHogs. I don't think Cam Morrison makes a big impact year one. Chad Yetman had a good season as an overager in the OHL, but I don't think that's going to translate perfectly in his rookie year after playing against 17 and 18-year-olds to now playing against grown-ass men in their 20s and 30s. Overall, outside of Quenneville, I think a lot of prospects are going to need to develop quickly and others will need to step up, or I think Rockford struggles mightily to score this season. That's going to be the name of the game for a lot of teams this year. A lot of youth, a lot of inexperience. Same holds true for Rockford's forward core as well.
Defensively, Cody Franzen coming back to Rockford is likely huge.
Mm-hmm.
He's 33, but I've got to believe he's still got something at the tank for the AHL level. If nothing else, Anton Lindholm and him can help mentor young guys like Alec Regula, who is a legit prospect. Regula is a good puck mover with a good shot. He doesn't have flashy puck skills or skating burst, but his giant frame helps him a lot in the D zone, and he has a really good stick. I think he's a second pair guy to start the season, but he could develop quickly into a guy the Blackhawks want to call up. The rest of the depth chart is a lot of kids and call-ups. I think Cole Moberg could be a decent second pair guy. I don't expect much from Ramsey, Osipov, or Krudel so health is going to be key here, as none of them are ready for big minutes. Isaac Phillips might be interesting, as he's a great skater who's aggressive off the rush, but he lacks the vision to find passing lanes. Maybe Chad Chris finally has put together the raw tools he already has, combined with some better decision-making and awareness. This would have been a deep defensive core if Dennis Gilbert or Nick Baudin were still in Rockford, but the Hawks kept them. But I think there's enough here to scrap together an above-average D-core with Franzen mentoring Regula, and Regula progressing to be what I think is, at the end of the season, could be a top pair AHL defenseman.
And not only did the Hawks keep Dennis Gilbert, but they, dangled him out in the offseason as trade bait and sent him and Brandon Saad to the Colorado Avalanche. So that doesn't help either. But going from defensemen to goalies, there is at least some reason for optimism here. Now, Cale Morris and Tom Aubrun, looks like Auburn, but it's Aubrun, both had very good collegiate careers at Notre Dame, Division I school, and Norwich, which is Division III. I wish I could say that NCAA goaltending success will absolutely transfer to the AHL, but maybe. Quick update, as Sean likes to say, goaltending is still voodoo. We'll check in later in the season to see if that's changed, but for right now, it's still voodoo. And, that means that the previous track record here gives me hope that one of these two will be a quality starter to help carry Rockford. But I'm not anything more than mildly optimistic, especially considering both are young. And the only other goalie on the roster currently is 26-year-old Matt Tompkins, who has been not good. So, all right. So Scott Darling signed a PTO like an hour after we recorded this preview. But before we released it, we have the opportunity to sneak in and to add this small little insert here. So Sean, I'm going to let you feel this. How does goaltender Scott Darling's addition change the trajectory of the Rockford IceHogs?
Well, I think for sure it shores up the hope that there's a quality AHL goaltender on the roster. I think Cale Morris is likely to pan out as a good AHL goalie. Tom Aubrun could maybe be a useful starter. Darling probably is unlikely to be a decent AHL starter at this point. He's 33 and hasn't looked good in net since 2017. Remember 2017? That feels like a lifetime ago. However, I think Darling could provide good value to the IceHogs, but not with his on-ice play. Darling's had a wild career that has likely seen it all. 2 seasons in the SPHL, 40 games across 3 seasons in the Coast, a battle with alcoholism, played overseas, has faced call-ups, demotions, and, oh yeah, he has a Stanley Cup ring as part of one of the most stacked teams in the modern era of the NHL. If that isn't the resume of a guy I want to mentor my 2 youngish, unproven rookie goalies during a shortened, ham-fisted season full of new obstacles amidst a global pandemic, then I don't know what is. Overall, I don't really think it changes how I view the outcomes of the team as a whole. maybe it shifts them a point or two in a positive direction, as I think Darling's mentorship can bring some more consistency from the goaltending aspect. But I think that's even a little speculative, but it's possible. I say it narrows the range of outcomes for them a little bit and shifts it to be a little more positive. But I don't think Scott Darling is going to come riding in and save the Rockford IceHogs because he's a great goaltender anymore. So I would say it moves the needle, and it's worth mentioning for his mentorship ability and what he can bring. But outside of that, I don't think there's much here.
That's a fair assessment. So let's talk outcomes. What's the best case scenario, Sean?
Best case, some combination of Cale Morris, Tom Aubrun, and Matt Tompkins gets the job done in a slightly above league average fashion. Cody Franzen generates enough offense from the back end to go along with a big season from Quenneville, and Tepley puts home 12 pucks in a shortened season. Finishing the season, their best case scenario with, I'd say, 33 points, which is an 84 point pace in a normal 76-game season. That's usually striking distance for a fourth seed in a playoff berth.
Yeah, they're going to be, it sounds like best case scenario, they're going to be right on the line with the playoff. You know, they're going to be on the playoff bubble. So that was the best case scenario. What's the worst case scenario?
Worst case, the offense struggles to score. Cody Franzen's body just doesn't have the magic anymore, and the kids are thrust into roles they aren't ready to handle. Cale Morris and company perform adequately, but can't make up for the bad play in front of them, losing a lot of 3-2 and 2-1 games where they just cannot get the scoring help. They finish with 29 points, worst case scenario, which is a 73 point pace in a usual 76-game season, and one that puts them firmly out of the playoffs in a regular season.
And you got the best case scenario, you got the worst case scenario. Let's talk the most likely scenario. So the model, the analytics model that we talk about so much on the show, projects them for about 32 points, which is about 82 points in a usual 76-game season. And I tend to agree. I think Franzen still has something in the tank, but they struggle to score outside of Quenneville and maybe Tepley. Cale Moore shows promise, and Matt Tompkins doesn't see much time. I agree with the model. I think 32 points is where they will most likely fall. And unfortunately, that is going to be falling outside of the postseason.
Or a, theoretical postseason at this point. But that would be in a normal season, that points pace would put them firmly on the outside looking in.
Right. Well,
so that's what we got for the Rockford IceHogs. Give us a moment to pay some bills here, and we'll be right back with the Grand Rapids Griffins season preview after this.
All right, let's talk about the Grand Rapids Griffins. Let's take a look here. Head coach Ben Simon is entering his third season at the helm there in Grand Rapids. Their 2019-20 regular season record was 29-27, 3-4. That's was good for third in the Central. Affiliation for 2021, of course, is with the Detroit Red Wings. Game scheduled, same as Rockford. You got 30 games. Opponents are going to be Chicago, Cleveland, Iowa, and Rockford. Again, all interdivisional, nothing too special about that. Let's talk about the forward core. It seems like Riley Barber won his medallion and is a taxi squad guy. Taro Hiroshi also might get yo-yoed in accordance with the Yeiser plan, as it were. If there wasn't enough pressure on Evgeny Svechnikov to break out this season, there is now, as he's really the last man standing here in terms of guys I know in my heart can put the puck in the net. In the offseason, I liked the Riley Barber signing, as it gave Svech a potential line mate for him to use his big body to shield the puck and find passing lanes to Barber down low. That dream is likely dead. The Griffins this season are going to need Kyle Kaskisuo to play defensively responsible center to Svech's offensive-minded style and to win their shifts. Guys like Elson and Turgeon are really going to have to find a second line level of offense to really make this forward group seem viable. The rest of the forward group looks like a lot of bottom line guys like Shine, McLeod, Loggins, Humitz, etc. They're not going to contribute much at all to the offensive side of the puck.
Defensively, Joe Hicketts is dependable. I think McIsaac can step in early and be a good middle pair guy that produces, as he's shown to be a good puck mover with some flashy hands. He's physical in his own end and a good skater. He's not great at anything, but McIsaac checks a lot of boxes you want to see in a potential NHL level defenseman. Lashoff is a good second, third pair guy. Charles Edward Dastu, while unlikely, could be someone who could admirably challenge for middle pair minutes. And while the D-core here lacks that higher end talent, it has enough depth where no one should be completely over their head with the task they're given. If McIsaac blossoms in the way I think he will, this will likely be the best position group on the Griffins.
All right. 2 groups down, 1 to go. Let's talk goaltending. And man, does this outlook change if Kevin Boyle is here? He's not, though, and it seems very unlikely he makes an appearance, as NHL teams are required to keep 3 goalies. So unless the Wings pull a goalie up, Boyle is staying put. And Boyle's earned that too, as a pretty impressive AHL career was netted to him. He had an impressive AHL career, and it's only netted him 5 NHL games. And his performance in those games was actually really good. As for guys who are in the room there in Grand Rapids, I like Pat Nagel. I've seen Pat Nagel play in person when Toledo came to Idaho when I was covering the Steelheads. He's someone who I feel has been snubbed for AHL call-ups and chances his whole career before last season. He had 8 AHL games in 10 years, despite a solid resume and 328 ECHL games. Gosh, I mean, he was in the Dallas Stars goalie system. He actually played for the Idaho Steelheads, played a few seasons in Fort Wayne, got involved with Toledo and the Detroit Red Wings organization. He looked way better in that 20-game sample last year than I anticipated. And while he is 33 years old, I think he's still got a lot to prove, and the Griffins should let him take the reins and run. Caden Fulker is someone he should be familiar with, as they both spent time in Toledo over the last 2 seasons. Got to see him as well when Toledo came to Idaho a few years ago. Fulker hasn't got any AHL starts yet, and his ECHL time, it didn't do great, which isn't surprising, as he wasn't great in the OHL across 4 seasons. Nagel has absolutely earned the spot with the Griffins, where Caden Fulker has not. I'd really like to see the Griffins go out and find someone who has the resume worthy of an AHL shot. Oh, someone like maybe former Idaho Steelheads goaltender Thomas Scholl, for example. That's just me talking, though. He's over in Slovakia currently. Anyway, let's talk outcomes.
Best case scenario, Svech and Chris Coelho hold down the fort. The defense plays out like I think it will. And Pat Nagel shows that last season's AHL play wasn't just a fluke. Maybe a few guest appearances from guys like Rasmussen or Giovanni Smith or Riley Barber give them a boost. Best case scenario, they finish with, drum roll, 34 points, which translate to about 86 in a usual season. What is the worst case scenario there, CC?
Worst case scenario, Svech continues to underwhelm, and the Yzer plan snatches up any reinforcements that might have helped. Nagel performs admirably, but the team can't score, and the defense is on the lesser side of average. They will finish with 27 points, which translates to about 68 points in a usual season. Sean, most likely scenario.
I think this is closer to the middle of the two. I expect the Griffins to struggle to score, even though I'm rooting for Svech to be the guy we all thought he could be on draft day. He doesn't look to have the help. The defense looks good enough, and I think Pat Nagel's voodoo abilities are good enough, and they should be able to pull out an okay finish given all those things. The model projects them for about 30 points based on point shares of their components right now, and that translates to about 77 in a usual season. I think that's about where I have them, so I'll run with that. 30 points is what I think they will put up this season.
Sounds good. And that's all we've got for the Grand Rapids Griffins. Give us a moment. We're going to pay some bills. We'll be right back with the Chicago Wolves season preview after this. All right. Chicago Wolves, last but not least, we'll talk a little bit about them in this Midwest trifecta, as we've talked about. They have an interesting situation. They are one of 3 AHL teams with 2 NHL affiliations. I wanted to bring that up first and foremost. They bring over the Carolina Hurricanes, which was going to be a new affiliation anyway after they cut ties with the Charlotte Checkers. A little bit of bad blood there. We won't get into it right now. But they're also taking on the Nashville Predators, since the Milwaukee Admirals, their normal AHL affiliate, decided to opt out of this season. So they've got Carolina, they've got Nashville, they are pretty spoiled for riches. Again, we'll get into that here in a second. Their head coach, former Charlotte head coach Ryan Warsofsky, it's going to be his first season in Chicago, of course. Their 2019-20 regular season record was 27, 26, 5-3. They were fourth in the Central. They were just holding on to that fourth and final playoff spot there in the Central Division. Again, like Rockford, like Grand Rapids, 30 games scheduled. Cleveland, Grand Rapids, Iowa, Rockford, the usual suspects. Sean, you want to talk about the Chicago Wolves forward core? My goodness.
Well, CC is, I say, double the affiliations, double the fun.
Woo!
While I said in our last episode that the Black and Silver Bandits in Ontario's forward group made them the team I'm most excited to watch, Chicago's got its own gang of kids this season that has potential to be a lot of fun. The question becomes, does the CHL force guys like Tomasino, Jarvis, Suzuki, Bach, and Reese to go back to juniors? For the Wolves fans' sake, let's hope not. And if you're thinking to yourself, Tomasino just got called up to the Preds, that is true. But he doesn't have to pass their waivers to come back to Chicago, which means he could very well end up back here. Because he's going to get those top-line minutes in Chicago with the Wolves, and he's not going to get them in Nashville. But let's start with him. Tomasino has wheels. He's fast, and he uses that speed effectively to play with pace and to make moves. There's an old phrase that reminds me of him, and it's this. At 50 miles an hour, everyone can do what Mario Andretti does. At 150 miles an hour, pretty much no one can do what Mario Andretti does. Tomasino isn't just fast, he has control at that speed as well. He does need to find some muscle as he's 6 foot, but only 181, but he's 19. Seth Jarvis was the number 13 overall pick in October's draft, and it's unheard of these days to see a number 13 overall pick in last season's draft in the AHL, but here we are. Jarvis, like Tomasino, has the need for speed. He's got NHL wheels and edge work for sure to pair with an attacking mentality and very good, but not elite puck skills. He's a player who has a motor that runs high and will compete shift after shift. He's undersized, but he's 18. How he performs against opponents that aren't in his age and physical development area will be interesting, but I'm looking forward to seeing him in Chicago. Suzuki suffered a very scary eye injury not that long ago, but he's a talented player who stands out every time he touches the puck. He lacks the speed that Tomasino and Jarvis have, but he has slick puck-making abilities and fine shooters in space. Bach also lacks speed of his young teammates, but he processes the game very well and has an absolute 50 cal for a shot. But he's not a one-dimensional shooter as someone, say, like Patrick Laine. He is someone who can be creative and a playmaker when the situation calls for it. Jamison Reese is another one that needs skating help, but his energy and highlight reel hands make up for it. Reese possesses the puck skills to embarrass defenders in the AHL level. He's a physical player and at times loses his temper and makes poor decisions, as he's been rightfully suspended a few times for his shenanigans in juniors. So that is an area that he needs to clean up a little bit, as you can't score from the penalty box. The rest of the offense is deep too. Guys like Gust, Malone, Bracco, and Pitlick are more than capable top 6 guys in the AHL. Michael McCarron is a serviceable third-line center who's big and physical and capable of playing net front presence on the power play. I think the Cotton Boys can contribute in limited roles this season. Overall, this is a deep group of forwards with high-end talent up top.
That's a bold strategy with not one but 2 Cotton Boys. Let's see how it plays out for them. All right, let's talk defense. And to pair with that deep forward group is maybe the best defensive core in the AHL this season. Again, double the affiliations, double the fun. Not too many groups can weather call-ups to the taxi squad and still be fine, but this one can. Alexander Carrier has 4 seasons of being a dynamic defenseman in the AHL with Milwaukee. Tyler Lewington isn't the prettiest puck mover, but handles business in his own end. Joey Keane has some defensive zone work to do, but his puck movement and hockey IQ are very high, making him a top AHL defenseman overall. Hockey IQ is also Jeremy Davies' standout ability, and while his skating kind of holds him back, he finds plays and passing lanes that others simply do not. That's 4 bona fide top pairing AHL defensemen on one team. Beneath then, you've got Kevin Fitzgerald. He's a middle pairing guy. He's capable of staying at home. He is a stay-at-home style defenseman, rather, who's looking at a number 5 role. Ben Harper, Brandon Hickey, and Max Lachois are all fine bottom pairing guys. That's a solid decor in the AHL if you're going to find. That's as solid as any decors you're going to find in the AHL. Good luck, Central Division.
As far as the voodoo practitioners on this roster, 4 goalies are currently listed. 2 are more known, 2 are unproven at the AHL level. For the known guys, Antoine Bibeau and Kasimir Kaskisuo are similar in their athletic styles that lack a little bit of structure. When they're on, they look like Dominic Hasek making wild acrobatic saves. When they're off, they let in goals that leave you scratching your head. Kaskisuo has made more strides in adding that structure to his game than Bibeau, but to be fair to Biebs, he missed nearly all of the 1920 season with a hip injury. So hopefully he's fully recovered from that, as hips are a very important part of your body when you're a goaltender. Kaskisuo also has a fun video diary on YouTube. So Wolves fans, please feel free to go check that out. Give you a little bit of a behind the scenes look to his off season. As for the unknowns, Jeremy Helvig has 2 career AHL starts, neither of which went very well, but 2 starts. His 2 seasons in the coast were mixed. 18-19 was very good, where 19-20 was below average. Beck Warm, which sounds more like a rum-based hot chocolate, comes to the Chicago Wolves from the WHL, where he finished his career with 2 pretty good, but not outstanding years. He seems like the best candidate to me to be the backup kind of depth goalie, while Biebs and Double K are the starting tandem.
All right. So just as Rockford announced the arrival of Scott Darling, the Chicago Wolves, maybe not, maybe not the franchise itself, but the Nashville Predators, who is affiliated with the Chicago Wolves this season, announced that goaltender Connor Ingram has entered a voluntary player assistance program. That's all that they mentioned. So Connor Ingram is no longer on Nashville's taxi squad. So because of that, Kasimir Kaskisuo is now on Nashville's taxi squad. So the Chicago Wolves lose a goaltender in Double K. And Sean, again, I wanted to ask you, how does this affect the Chicago Wolves for the 2021 season?
Well, I think it puts a lot more weight on Biebs to be successful as their goaltender. He's been a good goaltender in the past at the AHL level. An injury last season that pretty much wiped everything but 2 games out we're really going to see how healthy that hip has become. As I mentioned in the preview, hips are an important part for the goaltender. And if he's not totally healed from that or ready to resume a full starter workload, that's going to open up the door for a whole lot of voodoo to happen. We really don't know what to expect out of Jeremy Helvig or Beck Warm. So if they come in and play admirably, nothing really changes here, especially as Bibeau and Kaskisuo are very similar styled goaltenders. They're both athletic. They both don't really play with a lot of structure. Whereas I've not seen Helvig or Warm play, so I can't tell you what to expect them to look like per se. But I think you're going to see a lot more of Bibeau getting starts that would have probably been a 50-50 split between 2 competent AHL goaltenders. I think he's going to take more like 65 to 70% of the starts, if I had to guess. And we're going to find out sooner rather than later what the other 2 guys on the roster can do. As far as outcomes go, that probably makes it a little wider. I was pretty much counting on them to both be getting starts and to not see really any Helvig or Warm, and to have dependable goaltending, if not spectacular goaltending. But the fact that it's going to be Bibeau and some, 2 guys we don't know, that introduces a lot of chance for bad things to happen. I still think the Wolves are a very good team, but I think that probably shifts their outcome trajectory, best case scenario, worst case, most likely, back a few points. It shifts their worst case and their most likely back a few points. Best is still best. I mean, even without Double K, the best still means they're getting the same thing, the same outcome they would have with him, with a mix of Helvig, Warm, and Biebs. But their worst case scenario is Bebo doesn't look good, and they have to depend on the two of the other guys, and they aren't good. So I think that shifts it back that way a little bit.
Gotcha.
So let's talk outcomes. Cece, what is the best case scenario?
Best case scenario, of course, for a lot of teams that have a lot of young prospects from the Canadian Hockey League, the kids get to stay for the season. They never call them home. Beebs and Double K give them a solid goaltending tandem, and the defense looks like world beaters in the Central. They finish with 42 points. That is a 106-point pace in a normal season, which is definitely a Calder Cup favorite kind of AHL record. Worst case scenario, Shawnee.
The worst case scenario still ain't too bad. This is a good team. Worst case, Tomasino et al. Get called back to juniors or to the AHL or get hurt. Beebs doesn't look fully back from his hip problems, and Double K continues to just be inconsistent at best. The defense holds the team together, but they struggle more than they should. They finish with 33 points, which translates to an 84-point season, which is still like right on the playoff bubble most times. That's worst case scenario. This is still like a playoff bubble team. What's most likely to happen, CC?
Most likely, the model projects them for 37 points, which translates to 93 in a usual season. That's typically a first place finish in the Central and definitely a Calder Cup contender. I think that's a good number. I don't think their CHL eligible kids stick around for the whole season. They've made a commitment to work it out, to have a Canadian Hockey League season. So, while they do have depth, without them, they aren't as potent up front. So 37 feels like kind of a solid mark, just kind of right in the middle of the best and worst case scenario. I think they slightly overcome that a little bit. And I actually think they bump up. I say with 39 points, I think with the team that they do have, they gel quickly and they do have that chemistry because you have a lot of good veterans in that. Again, if the young kids end up going back to the CHL, they'll pull themselves up by their bootstraps and they'll do very well. And they'll definitely make the postseason should the AHL have one. So there you have it.
I think that's a good call. I think no matter what, that defensive core is going to hold that team together no matter what happens up front should the CHL come calling back for like Tomasino and Jarvis. Bach is staying no matter what, I believe. So I think no matter what, if you're a Chicago Wolves fan, enjoy the early goings of this season because they're going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun team to watch, just like the Ontario Reign from our last episode. Look out for Chicago. Get that AHL.TV package and watch some Wolves games. It's going to be a fun season for them.
Well, that's it for the show. If you guys are enjoying the show, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're on a platform that has rating and reviewing, please rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening to it from. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, which we recommend, we're very fun to look at as well. Like the video and comment what you thought of the episode. Doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews help us improve the show. You can also follow us on social media, which is down on our little scrolling banner there. Our social media is at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at the Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found on our link tree, which is linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead.
And my name is CC Hockley. Once again, you can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at FPC_AHL, my personal Twitter account. You can also see me retweeting hockey stuff and talking hockey on there as well at CC Hawk. That's SEESEEHAWK. You can check out my writing on the Full Press Coverage Network at www.fullpresshockey.com. And of course, this podcast is part of the Full Press Radio Network. Sean.
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SEANOBRIEN81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. You can find my stats work on Tableau at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. Adrian Drake made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction, DYSFUNCTION, so he can make music for you. Full Press Coverage hosts our podcast. You can find them at fullpresscoverage.com and on social media at Full Press Coverage for coverage of the NHL, AHL, NFL, NBA, and more.
And as always, thank you guys for tuning in. This has been episode number 2 of the Calder Farmstead. We look forward to keep moving on, and it'll be out a good Monday. So keep your stick on the ice.